We have the pleasure of welcoming John today to our interview series Leaders Hum. I'm Aishwarya Jain from the peopleHum team. Before we begin, just a quick introduction of peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work with automation and AI technologies. We run the peopleHum blog and video channel, which receives upwards of 200,000 visitors a year and publish around 2 interviews with well-known names globally every month. And now for our guest, John Somers, the principal analyst at the HR Examiner, an independent analyst firm. He works and researches on HR technology and includes all aspects of the newest technologies to solve problems. He also conducts 3 weekly podcasts and written commentary for HR Examiner. He's been well known for his keynote addresses and ideas about all things HR. We're very happy to have John share his wide array of knowledge and experience to all of our viewers and create a better HR experience. Welcome, John. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for your time. So, John, I'd like to dive into the questions that I had for you. And if you could start with telling us a little bit about your work as a principal analyst.
And so HR Examiner, hrexaminer.com is a analyst firm, and we do several things. We have weekly podcasts, we have daily editorial content, and do an annual report. And the annual report has been focused on AI for the last 4 years now, and we're going to continue to do that. The interesting thing is that in this time of the pandemic, AI is coming into deeper consideration, and so I'm spending a great deal of time talking with heads of HR departments, CHROs, CEOs, and vendors who are supplying stuff to the industry.
All right, that is excellent. And, what is your opinion about the latest trends with respect to human capital management platforms? Because there is just so much talk about automation and, these employee engagement platforms. So how do you think that will redefine the HR space? And will there be a refresh cycle upon us since the major ones are now being looked at as legacy?
Complicated question, and it's further complicated by the COVID-19 virus. So it's my view that we're headed into a time where the very nature of HR is going to change, and that means, on the one hand, that what you want to do is have tools that change quickly because we're going to be redoing things, and on the other hand, there's something to be said for the stability of a platform, but by its very nature, a platform makes you slower. And so the question going into, once there's a plateau for the spread of the virus and we start to normalize, the question is, where do you want to be when you get there, right? The thing to worry about right now isn't the major trends, but it's, what's your business going to look like when you hit the plateau, and how's HR going to be different, right? Some of the ways that HR is going to be different include, today we have succession planning, and succession planning tends to mean who's going to replace the top executives if something happens to them. Well, in an environment where you're going to lose 1 or 2 out of every 100 people in your organization, and 15 to 20 of every 100 are going to require hospitalization. The question is, how do you plan for the succession of people in smaller roles? Because it turns out that the people at the very front end of the business are actually how revenue happens, right? And in some ways are far more essential than the executives who manage them. And so how do you understand which of those frontline employees are essential and which aren't? And how do you know who would be a good person to replace them if they get sick or die? Those are the kinds of questions in the future. I don't think, at least in the United States, we don't have a good track record for thinking that way about this.
Mhm. Right. Yeah, I think succession planning, not a lot of people talk about it actually. And with the recent outbreak, it will be more essential to kind of look at who's going to replace whom, and then really strategize as to how your corporate is going to get restructured, because a lot of laying off is happening, and there are a lot of people who are going to be out of jobs. So that demand and supply is now going to be unequal. So there would be a lot of reskilling and upskilling. And I agree with you. The succession planning part of it should also be given a lot of impetus. Um, so, do you also think that the future of work is going to change because of the whole coronavirus situation? And how should HRs particularly deal with, such a grave situation?
It would be my view that the future is happening, that the now of work is about making the necessary adjustments. Some portion, in the States, it's 30% of the workforce is now operating from home, and it was never anything like that before now. And so we're going to have to learn, what does it mean to have people operate at home? How closely do we supervise people who are at home? Should the supervisor make home visits, and what does that mean, and what's okay for that, and how much notice do you have to have? All these sorts of things that are the realities of a distributed workforce. Um, we have to figure out now. This is not a project for the future. We're in the future, and we have to figure out what to do about that. And so I think there are a whole lot of questions that we don't even know what they are yet.
Right. Yeah, and like you said, right, the future of work is actually the now of work. But there are like so many terminologies around it. There's like future of work, flow of work, now of work, then there's employee engagement, employee experience, and now there's even human experience. So there's like so much confusion as to what is what. And do you see all of this settling and coming to one particular terminology?
Oh, I certainly hope not. I think that a singularly dangerous idea is that there's one answer to all of this. So if you're an insurance company and you've had to go from centralized working to distributed working, uh, you're going to have to figure out all sorts of things, and they boil down to employee experience. They'll certainly affect engagement, but um, it doesn't really matter. The first thing is, can you get the people up and running in their work, right? And then it's in everybody's interest, once people are up and running in their work, to make it better. And so we're going to have. Well, here's some of the questions we're going to have. Once people are used to working in a distributed way, then there's a real estate question, right? The company will have office buildings that it needs to get rid of because people don't work there anymore. But if I'm doing your work in my house, shouldn't you be subsidizing my rent? Um, and different companies will have different answers to that. That'll be a business model question, and it isn't that one way is better than another way. It's that all of these things that we've been talking about, engagement, future of work, have to do with, how does my company get its work done, right? And what really matters isn't some speculative fiction about some long-term future. What really matters is, what's the best way to get our work done now. Um, and so I think we're going to be sort of redirected to, what's the best way to get work done now. And if we're not doing it the best way, how do we fix it? And if a fix doesn't exist, how do we get or buy it?
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I think there would be a change of mindsets now, and people will have to look at different kinds of strategies really to, you know, get into that perspective of how to keep running and not only surviving but also flourishing and thriving, right? And I think the situation is really going to teach us a lot of things. And how do you think that technology can play a role in this? And surely a lot of people think it's the devil, but how do we really become more productive? There is so much advancement in technology now. There's AI, there's machine learning. So how can we enhance people processes and experience through this? And are they here to stay as enablers, or will it take over some or most aspects of the process?
Well, so I think we're in a really good place for starting to think about some things. And the first thing that you have to think about is the business itself has changed. It's not possible to have lived through the last week, and it certainly won't be possible to live through the next 90 days without it directly impacting your business. The way you work, the place you work, the thing you sell, the thing you do every day, all of those things are going to be up for grabs. And so we need some vision from the leadership about where we're going. What's it good? How do we tell when we get there? Is part of vision. How do we know when things are settling down? Because everybody's confused, as you say. Um, and then that vision gets communicated to a broad spectrum of managers whose job it is to make sure that people are able to do the work. And that's where you start to have intelligent use of technology, is making sure that people are able to do the work. And there's all sorts of different things now. We've been in an environment for 10, 11, 12 years where labor shortage was the primary driver of everything. And we're not going to have a labor shortage tomorrow. We're going to have a surplus. And that's liable to affect relationships between countries. It's liable to affect what constitutes the qualifications for a job. It's going to be very, very interesting. A lot of companies can't go back and do the business they used to do. So, for instance, the airline companies, there will never be another time in our lifetimes where people travel in the way that they travel, because the degree to which that's unhealthy just became really obvious to everybody. So it's going to take a lot to get people back on airplanes. And those big companies are going to have to do something different in order to survive. Same thing with hotels. Now we're seeing big hotels turned into hospitals. Have you seen that there yet? Yeah. So there's use for big hotels, because it's going to be a while before people want to go sleep in a bed that somebody else slept in last night, no matter how clean the sheets are. It seems unlikely that we're going to feel confident about that stuff. So all of these big companies are going to have to rethink what they do and what the value is that they create. And it's a particularly hard time to do that because so much of the world is uncertain. But once you understand what you do, then you take a look at all of your technology and see whether the technology is helping you get there or hurting you from getting there. That's the first thing. So what's happened, like by magic, is we've sort of gotten to the point that all of the people talking about digital transformation were talking about, which is you have to rethink the whole thing. That's what they were saying, and that's why nobody did it. And now we're getting to the place where you don't have any choice but to rethink the whole thing. And that's a good time to get very serious about deploying technology to sort of be the infrastructure for the business that you're about to become.
Yeah, absolutely. I think technology, I mean, if you didn't have technology, I would not be able to talk to you right now remotely from home. So it's very important to kind of include technology as we move into a different, I'd say, a different period of how we're going to work, and to really help with the remote working culture that we have right now. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And like, since you're talking to like so many people right now, what is it that they're mostly facing, as a haunting challenge? I'm sure there are a lot of things, but what is the single most important thing that you're hearing out of all of these calls?
Well, so people who work in HR have the hardest job in the world right now. On the one hand, they are the point people for employees who are in stressful situations, and everybody's in stressful situations. And the number of questions that HR people get is exploding as people try to figure out how they fit into this stuff. So so at the very same time, the HR people are part of every layoff, and so they have to be um, compassionate all the way through, but two different kinds of compassionate. One is you're helping, and the other is challenging. Right? It's hard. It's hard to sit through terminations, and many of the people in HR are going to have to do that a lot. While they're being compassionate with the people who are still working there, because the people who still work there have adjustment problems to the virus, and so that means that you're in the market for tools that reduce the amount of time it takes to answer questions. And there are some. Um, the chatbots are sort of overrated, but there are emerging management tools like Socrates.ai that integrate all of the existing HR systems so that if you want to ask a question like, how much money will I make on my maternity leave and when can I start? That requires looking up things in 4 or 5 different systems to get to that simple question. And you can automate those sorts of things so that the machine is quite capable of answering a question like that. So
Ab-
that's the kind of thing you'll see.
Absolutely. And that is what, we as people, we've also done the same thing. We've integrated a chatbot into our HR platform. So you could just, type in queries real fast and it'll give you those answers. Because, going forward, 75% of your workforce is going to be about millennials, and they really don't like the menu-driven applications anymore. They're more about conversations, and they like typing, texting a lot. So it makes a lot of sense to have that technology embedded into your existing platforms. And talking about millennials, there will be an increase of millennials in the workforce, and the gig economy is also rising. I'm not sure if that's going to happen after the COVID, but we do have a lot of contract workers now for many roles. So how do you think this trend is relevant with respect to the future of work?
Well, I think a whole lot of people aren't going to be very happy about being gig workers very soon. And so the idea that that's a trend that's going to grow seems misplaced. It sounds to me like that's a trend that's about to shrink. Um, and that it's going to be the case that if you can get a job where they might pay your benefits after there's no business because they're a compassionate employer, that's way better than living month to month in a gig economy trying to make sure that your health insurance payments are made. Right? Very different environment. So people are going to start to see the value in belonging to larger organizations and prioritize that over the freedom that comes from gig work. And so I think you'll see much less voluntary movement to gig work. Now, it's possible that employers like the math so much that that people won't have a choice but to become gig workers because jobs don't get replaced, say, or jobs aren't the way you grow a company. And so that might make it continue to grow. But that'd be a very different world because you'd have a whole lot of people who are really angry with big companies in that world.
Absolutely. Yeah, there would be a lot of angry people. Big corporations would really have to rethink how to kind of hire. What is their model of hiring now? It's definitely.
Yep. So that's another. That's as I was saying before. We're at a time where HR gets to envision what it's going to be in your particular company, and that's exactly the kind of question. Who are we going to hire and why? Is a big question. We're usually too busy to bother with it, but we're going to get a chance to deal directly with it now.
Yeah, I think it's a good time to actually gain perspective of the situation and take out time to, re-strategize. Otherwise, I think big corporations or any corporation for that matter would find themselves in, a big soup. So yeah, definitely, this time has to be more productive for HRs, especially in these tough times. And that just leaves me with, the last question is if you have any other important sound bites that you'd like to leave for our viewers, especially in these times.
Hmm. This will require more editing than the rest of it. As you watch what's going on with the COVID virus, please understand that this is your initial training in how to use intelligent technologies. All of the tools in AI are built on basic principles of data and statistics. And if you pay attention to the news at all, what you'll see is a complicated arrangement and rearrangement of ideas about what's going on because the data changes and the models change, the sample size changes, and we're all getting a deep surprise lesson in that stuff that's going to make it easier to understand what we get from the intelligent assistants that are going to be everywhere in our lives very shortly. And for that, one of the things that is really important for me to be sure that people understand about that stuff is um, it's way too soon to let machines make decisions. Way too soon. The technology simply isn't good enough to let machines make decisions about whether I have a job or you have a job, the kinds of decisions that they're moving towards. Um, and what you need to do is understand that the machine has an opinion, and you should consider that opinion deeply in your decision making. But just because the machine says this is a good idea doesn't mean that it's a good idea. It's just the machine's opinion, and learning how to make it okay for the machine to be wrong is part of what it takes to integrate these tools into our workforce. And so what we're going to watch right now is what happens and how we respond when lots of people are wrong. Nobody's getting it right now. Nobody's getting it right now. Everybody's making stupid mistakes. And the kind of compassion required for the machines to introduce machines into the workforce is that exact same kind of compassion. Understand that they're flawed, understand that they will make mistakes, help them, right? And that's how we really get to the next level of productivity. So how's that?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. There will be a requirement of human intervention. We cannot completely rely on automation and technology. Absolutely. Thank you so much, John, for your time today. It was really wonderful talking to you, and I really appreciate you sharing your views. I think it's been a learning experience for me personally, and would definitely be for our viewers too. So, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. See you soon.
See you soon.
Bye
Take
bye.
care.